"Hey, would you like to go to the cinema on the 23rd? Oh, I'm very sorry, brother, but Mia and I are going to her sister's wedding. Oh, okay. My congratulations to them. Thank you. I hope to see you next time. 1 month later. Hey, Leo, what's been going on with you lately?" "Well, let me tell you, Colton. Remember when I told you that my wife's sister got married? It was a pretty eventful day for me." "Oh, really? What happened?" "Mia was a total rock star and spent every spare moment helping out. She even took a few days off work, which was no problem for me because family always comes first. To be honest, I don't know my sister-in-law's new husband too well, but from what I've seen, he seems like a great guy. He's got a good sense of humor and is easy to talk to. I'm really happy for them, and I hope they have a long and happy life together. Sounds like a pretty normal wedding so far." "What happened that day?" "I woke up that morning with a feeling of excitement, like a kid on Christmas morning. I was going to see Mia, whom I hadn't seen for a few days. As soon as I finished my morning routine, I headed to her place, hoping to catch her off guard with a surprise visit. When I arrived, I saw her brother at the door, looking at me quizzically. He told me that Mia was getting ready and would come out to see me in the car. I was a bit confused, but went along with it, hoping that everything was okay. After a few minutes, I saw her walking towards me, and my heart skipped a beat. As soon as she got to the car, she gave me a tight hug, and I could smell the perfume I bought her on our last anniversary. She then kissed me and said, 'We need to talk.' My heart sank a little, and I started to get worried. What could be so important that she couldn't even let me in the house? But I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on her. She looked nervous and fidgety, which was unlike her. I knew I had to listen to her, no matter what she had to say. What did she need to talk to you about? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mia had an affair with the best man at a wedding we were going to attend later that day. My mind was racing, trying to process what she had just told me. We had been in a committed relationship for 5 years, and I thought I knew everything about her. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to remain calm and collected. She must have seen the shock on my face because she reached out and placed a reassuring hand on mine. "It didn't mean anything," she said. "It was a mistake, and I regret it." I took a deep breath and tried to compose myself. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to say, my voice shaking a little. As we drove to the wedding, my mind was a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything, and I felt like I was in a daze. I couldn't help but wonder if she had kept any other secrets from me. Would he ever be able to trust her again? That's definitely a shock. What did you do next? I decided to brush it off at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I remembered how she was acting sketchy during a period in our relationship. She was unavailable when she usually wasn't, and went on hikes with friends from work for 2 weekends in a row. That must have been a difficult realization for you. How did the rest of the day go? It was pretty tough, to be honest. As we made our way through the congratulatory line, I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Mia and I had just had a serious conversation about her past affair with the best man, and now she was telling me she was going to dance with him? My mind was reeling, and I didn't know what to do or say. I tried to push my doubts aside and focus on the wedding celebration. The atmosphere was festive and the music was great, but every time I looked over at my wife, I saw her dancing with the best man, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. Was she really over him, or was she still harboring feelings for him? At the wedding, I couldn't help but notice the best man and Mia were joking around like old friends. It was obvious that they had a history together, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I felt like an outsider looking in on something I didn't fully understand. To make matters worse, Mia thought it would be a good idea to introduce us. I could feel my blood pressure rising as I shook his hand. I was polite, of course, but inside I was seething. I couldn't believe that Mia thought it was appropriate to introduce me to the man she had cheated on me with. "Did you say anything to him?" I didn't say much to him, but I was definitely not happy. He ended up talking to Mia for a few minutes, and it drove me crazy. I eventually had to step away and go to the bathroom to cool down. That must have been really tough to deal with. How did things end up? When I came back, he was gone, and Mia was upset with me for being rude. I told her that we could talk about it later, but she was insistent on leaving. I said that we could stay or leave, but she was determined to go. That's understandable. Did you talk to her about it? I made a conscious decision not to say anything about my wife dancing with the best man at the wedding. I didn't want to spoil the occasion or distract from the happy couple's big day. But as the night wore on, the thoughts were still eating away at me. I knew I needed to talk to my wife and clear the air. We talked about it later that night when we got home. She explained to me that the bridesmaid and her partner were both wives and wanted to dance with a friend, so she ended up dancing with the best man instead. She insisted that there was nothing between them and that it was purely innocent. I also asked her to tell me the whole story about the other guy. I needed to know what happened and why it happened. It was a tough conversation, but she was willing to talk about it and be honest with me. As she recounted the story, I could feel my heart sinking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she have done this to me? But I kept listening, hoping that there was a logical explanation. Then when I asked her about the timing of the affair, she dropped a shock effect. It had happened while we were together for over a year. I couldn't believe that she had been unfaithful to me for so long without me even knowing. That must have been a shock to hear. How did she react? When I finally confronted my wife about her affair and pointed out that we had been together for a year during that time, her response was just, "I know." It felt like she didn't even care about the hurt and betrayal she had caused me. I was so angry and hurt that my trust had been broken. She tried to explain that it was only physical and that she never intended to leave me for the other guy, but I was so confused and hurt that I didn't know what to believe. How could she have done something so hurtful without any regard for the consequences of her actions? How did the argument end? When we tried to talk about it again, Mia said something that made me feel like she was brushing my feelings aside. She told me that I was acting like a child, and that what happened in the past had no bearing on our life together now. But the truth is, it's not easy to just forget something like that. Leo, I can only imagine how hard this situation must be for you. How are you feeling now? Honestly, I'm still struggling. It's been 2 weeks since Mia told me about her affair, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with it. I feel so betrayed and hurt that she could lie to me and cheat on me like that. To make matters worse, when I try to talk to her about it, she acts like it's no big deal. She's not taking my feelings seriously, and instead, she's accusing me of being childish for being upset. It's like she doesn't understand how much she's hurt me. That's really tough. Have you talked to her about how you're feeling? Well, Mia has been trying to talk to me and work things out, but I just can't bring myself to look at her the way I used to. I know that the affair happened a few years ago, and we're married now, but the pain is still fresh and raw. It sounds like a really difficult situation. It was a tough decision, but I finally told Mia that I wanted to break up with her. It wasn't an easy conversation, and I knew it was going to be hard for both of us. But what happened next was completely unexpected. Mia began to have a terrible hysteria, and she was having panic attacks. It was like she couldn't handle the news, and everything became too much for her to bear. In the end, things got so bad that we had to take her to the hospital. It was a scary and stressful situation. When Mia was taken to the hospital, her family rushed to be with her. It was a scary and emotional time, and we all spent a lot of time talking and trying to work through our feelings. I was already feeling pretty tense and stressed after everything that had happened, but then my wife's dad surprised me by apologizing for how she was raised. He said that he felt like he did a terrible job as a parent, and that he disagreed with the idea that everything that happens before marriage doesn't count. When we finally got home, my wife said that she wanted to be with her mom for a while, so I decided to go to the office to finish up some work. I thought it would be good for us to have a little space and time to process everything that had happened. But a few hours later, I got a message from her. She was begging me to come home, saying that she needed me there with her. I asked her what she wanted to talk about. She surprised me by saying that she wanted to talk about everything openly and honestly. She said that she didn't want me to feel like I was being lied to or manipulated anymore. And how did that go? Mia was completely honest with me, even when I asked her some really difficult questions. I wanted to know all the details, so I asked for the dates, and thankfully, it happened before we got engaged. Then I asked her how many times it had happened, and she told me it wasn't a lot, but it still hurt to hear. I'm sorry, man, that can't be easy to hear. One of the hardest moments for me was when I asked Mia why she had an affair. I was so upset that I couldn't even get the words out without breaking down in tears. I wanted to know why I wasn't good enough for her, why she chose him over me, and why she didn't just leave me if she wasn't happy. That sounds really difficult, Leo. Yeah, it was. It's hard to admit, but I don't even remember what Mia said when I asked her why she had an affair. I was so upset and overwhelmed with emotion that nothing she was saying really registered with me at that point. It's a strange feeling, like my mind just shut down and couldn't process anything. All I knew was that I was hurt and betrayed. After everything that had happened, I think that was a moment when I realized that it was over between us. It wasn't a decision that I made lightly, but I knew that I couldn't go on like this. That day, I didn't say anything to my wife, but personally, I had already decided that it was going to be our last meeting. It was a difficult and emotional realization, but it felt like the right thing to do. What led you to finally decide to go through with the divorce? Despite trying really hard to work things out with Mia, I eventually came to the realization that I just couldn't move past what had happened. It was too big of a betrayal for me to handle, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life feeling hurt and betrayed. It was a tough decision to make, but I knew that I had to put my own emotional well-being first and do what was best for me. How did she react when you sent her the divorce papers? Breaking up with someone is never easy, especially when they're your spouse. When I decided to end things with Mia, I knew she'd be hurt, but I didn't expect her to be that angry. She called me multiple times and flooded my inbox with messages. At first, she was all lovey-dovey, telling me how much she cared for me and wanted to work things out. But then her tone shifted, and she started berating me, telling me how horribly I had treated her and what a lousy person I was. Honestly, by that point, I had already checked out emotionally, and her words fell on deaf ears. And if that wasn't enough drama, things took a turn for the worse when she did something truly outrageous just yesterday. The woman tried to break into my brother's house, where I've been staying for the past few weeks. I couldn't believe it when I heard about it. Apparently, she climbed over the fence and set off the alarm system. What's even worse is that no one was home at the time, so both the police and private security rushed over right away. Of course, she tried to come up with some excuses, but they didn't buy it and ended up hauling her off to the police station. Talk about crazy. To be honest, the whole situation is completely nuts, and I just can't deal with it. I have absolutely no desire to visit her or even think about negotiating with the authorities on her behalf. After what she did, she needs to learn to figure things out on her own. It's high time she faced the consequences of her actions and stopped depending on me to bail her out all the time. Actually, considering everything she's done to you, you should have treated her even worse. But from what I can see, she's doing pretty fine on her own. Good luck, brother. After her crazy break-in attempt, Mia ended up spending several more days at the police station dealing with the fallout. When she finally got out, she had the nerve to call me up and blame everything on me. She even went so far as to make some pretty serious threats. Of course, I wasn't about to put up with that nonsense, so I just hung up on her. But even before that, I'd already decided that it was time for her to take responsibility for her own actions. So I recorded our entire conversation on a voice recorder, and I've given it to my lawyer to use in court during our divorce proceedings. As for me, I have to say that Mia's behavior has finally pushed me over the edge. I'm completely over her now and feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Despite all the craziness, I truly believe that everything happens for the best.